This is an extension to Lesson 1-7. You can put these notes along with your Lesson 1-7 notes, and this extension is called Determining Whether a Relation is a Function. So the first thing there is I'm pretty confident that after the past week or so you are clear on what it means to have a function, a one-to-one relationship on the table. We haven't talked about this word though, so let's talk about what a relation is, and it's a pretty simple idea. It starts right here in the first sentence. A relation is any pairing of inputs with outputs. In other words, anytime you make a table and you put inputs and outputs on your table, you have just created a relation. Now remember, for that relation to be a function special, each input would have to give you specifically one output. One of the things that they're going to ask you to do today is, in your assignment, is to determine whether the relation, whether the table they give you is a function. So let's take a look at these two. Is this relation on the left a function? Well, let's check. And when I look here, I notice that the input 4 is giving me two different outputs. The input 4 gave me two different outputs, 0 and 1. Well, right away that tells me that this table is not a function then. Okay, this is not a function for that reason. Let's look at the second table. Is this relation a function? Well, 3, outputs 1, input 5, output 2, input 7, output 3, input 9, output 2. Each input is only producing one output, so a little check mark, yes, this is a function. So you should be able to look at a table and really, with little thinking, be able to determine, is it a function or not? There's no calculating to do there. Do you have a one-to-one relationship or don't you? That's the difference between a relation being a function versus not. Sometimes you don't have a table. Sometimes you have a graph, and you want to be able to look at your graph and determine if it's a function or not. We can use what's called a vertical line test to determine if a graph's a function or not. Here's how the vertical line test works. You can see a picture of it right here in this key concept box, vertical line test. All right? Look at these graphs. This first graph has points that look like it make a V shape when you plot them. If I can take a vertical line and my vertical line would never touch more than one point at a time, it is a function. So if you imagine here, if I drew imaginary lines, and I'm just trying to do them straight down, trying to do the best I can, you notice none of these lines will ever touch more than one point at any time. Vertical lines, vertical means up and down, of course. This is a function for that reason. It passed the vertical line test. There was never more than one point on any of my vertical lines. Same thing here. Let's go to this one. Let's do the vertical line test again. I want to see, would any of these points, or would I draw a line, would it ever touch more than one point vertically? Well, not there. That one wouldn't. You can see the one listed. You notice none of these would touch more than one point at any time. So again, this example is a function again. Now let's go to the third example. Let's try the vertical line test. And as you notice, what they drew here in the book, if I drew a vertical line right here, it's not going to touch one point. It's going to pass through 3. Remember, if you can draw a line vertically and it touches more than one point at any time, that fails the vertical line test, and that's why you can see here, this one is certainly not a function for that reason. So you ought to be able to look at a table quickly, a relation in a table, and quickly tell if it's a function or not. And you ought to be able to look at a picture of a graph and in seconds be able to determine, is it a function or is it not? Okay? Let's try the vertical line test in these situations. So here you see a graph, and I'm going to try the vertical line test. And you notice, vertical lines, right here, I could draw a line, and I could touch 2 points. For that reason, I found a place where my line could touch 2 points. That means this is not a function. This did not pass the vertical line test. So I guess I'm just going to write it here. This is not a function. It failed the vertical line test. Okay? Now this one, let's try this graph and see if it passes the vertical line test. Well, if I drew a vertical line here, it did, and if I do one here, it does. And looks to me like there's never a time I can draw a vertical line where it's touching more than one point. So for this one did pass the test. This graph is a function. That's all I had to explain in this video. If you have questions, ask. If not, we can get to work.